episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Stray Cats, and it was last year when I did the Rockabilly Guitar Chords Primer. And I recently did the, I Love 50s Chords kind of Chordplay episode, and I had some requests for Brian Setzer, and I started thinking about it. And the Rockabilly Primer was technically going to be a Stray Cats lesson, but I got distracted and kind of sidetracked, and I decided to kind of make that a primer. But then, a year plus later, I decided to go ahead and do the Stray Cats, which is this episode. So the Stray Cats formed in New York in 1979, and they almost immediately moved to England because there was a resurgence of this 50s, rock and roll in England. So I think they decided, okay, we're not really going to be able to find much of an audience here. They moved overseas, and almost immediately they captivated, British audiences, and they had interest from record labels. They released 2 albums in England, and then all of a sudden they had success in America, and they had Rock This Town, Stray Cat Strut, and some of these songs, they blew up on the radio, and they basically issued an album built for speed in America, which is kind of taking the best of those first 2 albums from England and put it together on one album, and it literally just exploded, very successful. And then they followed that with a few albums, but really Stray Cats were on fire from 1979 till about 1984. I mean, they were unstoppable. They're extremely popular. They had videos on MTV. They had songs on the radio. They were touring. Their image, everything. They were huge. I did some research for this episode, and I was curious. I've always wondered this, and I just never really looked into it. But I wondered why there was this 1950s resurgence, in the 70s and the 80s. And then when I read a few articles and was kind of getting some more information, basically the 70s, almost at the beginning of the decade, immediately there was this huge 50s kind of revival of music. And oldies radio stations started popping up in the 70s, for the first time, and they were playing a lot of 50s music. And then eventually you had movies like American Graffiti, Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days on TV. You had the Grease musical and movie. Elvis and Chuck Berry and all these 50s artists had these huge comeback tours and specials and stuff. So really the 70s were just building this nostalgia and memory of the 50s, and then by the end of the 70s, it was just, it was overflowing or whatever, it was boiling over. And the next thing you know, you had bands like the Stray Cats, and they came at just the right time, that window of time, and they literally just exploded because it was exactly what people were wanting. If they weren't disco fans and they weren't punk fans, they were looking for something, and the Stray Cats was it. But the opening that Stray Cat Strut from Built to Speed, and it's also on the first Stray Cats album, the one that was released in England. Something like this. Just kind of summing up that intro part, because it goes from single notes to octaves to partial chords to full chords, and Brian is constantly changing, his rhythm part. So we're in C minor here. It starts like this. So think C minor right there. And then right there's a G augmented chord that he's picking through, and it's part of that lead in the beginning. I talked about this in the Rockabilly Primer, but that intro part there, and then after that G augmented, you're going to grab, so the 6th fret there on the G and the B, and then the 7th fret on the D to the 8th fret on the G. Weird little lick, because that's basically what, D flat to F and then A to E flat. Sounds like Buckethead or something. Hear this, descending minor progression. It's basically a 1 flat 7 flat 6 to the 5, and we're doing C minor, B flat, A flat to G, and you really just hear the root note first, and then you hear octaves. And then you hear him fill out flat 7, A flat 7 to G7, and you're just doing that descending walk down. Depending on where you are in that song, you might just be playing a single note or an octave or a little piece of the chord. And it does sound like sometimes Brian's playing the inside of those chords instead of playing the full bar, like the middle 4 strings. And he's letting the bass carry the, root notes. I'm hearing that in there. I'm not really sure if he did that. Because sometimes you definitely hear the top. Sometimes you hear more of the bottom, so it really just depends. So use your ear and listen, if he's doing this, or more like a full strum. There's little variances, while Brian's playing that part. Okay, here's the chorus of Stray Cat Strut, and it's just a variation of the intro, because now we're going to start in F minor right here. There, just play F minor, and then E flat major, D flat major, to C7. And just adding on that F minor right there. Right now, the bridge of Stray Cat Strut. I'm obviously a big fan of this song, but the bridge is interesting too. And I think I featured this in the Rockabilly Primer, but whatever. So right there, it was F minor. F minor 7, and then you're going to grab C minor, and you're also flirting with the 9th up there, that D note, and he does like a chord slide from B into C minor, B minor to C minor, like that. Back to that F minor, F minor 7, basically play a D7, but you're starting here, so it's like D7 over A. And then right here, this is really unusual, so it's going to be basically a G7 flat 9 flat 13. Like that, and then you go right back to the head again, like that C minor riff. So one more time with that bridge. Next is the big fan favorite Rumble in Brighton, which is on the Built for Speed album. It's also on the first Stray Cats album, like this. Has this old school, rockabilly feel. So it's E minor right there. So you're gonna let that ring, and this is definitely a big 50s rockabilly kind of secret, but you're gonna strum that chord and let the top part ring while you're changing those, lower notes. And that's tricky because you need to keep part of the, part of the strings ringing while you're manipulating and changing other strings. Like that. That's tricky. And right there, you're going to go to A minor. You can kind of mimic that in A minor right here. And then go back to E minor. And then right there you're going to do a B flat power chord into a B. And then he's starting to add this D note right there. And then it's a little piece of C and C6. And then you're going to do open A to G flat to F, and then right back down to E minor again. Okay, up next we have the title track from Built for Speed, and this totally has this old Eddie Cochran kind of groove to it, like this. Big old-time feel to it. So we're basically flirting with different partial chords, you know, and we're flirting with E right here. So think of E, you know, very, very standard kind of riff. Right there, you're literally just grabbing, you know, the major third and the fifth, that open B, and you're holding down this, you know, A double stop right there, that A and C sharp. It's just kind of a passing, you know, partial chord, and then this little piece of E7, that B note and D. And then hammer on that minor third to major third, that open G to G sharp. Like that. And that's all over E right there. Brian's not playing that low E, the bass is playing the root note. Brian's just playing that. And then when it moves to A, the 4 chord, it's just mimicking the exact same riff, but now we're in A right here. So right there's your, you know, little piece of A major. That kind of passing chord there on the 7th fret double stop, and then you're sliding into this G and E right there for a little piece of A7, and you're also doing that minor to major hammer on at the end, and then back to E. When it moves to the 5 chord, which is B or B7, it's a little different here. So there's the, you know, kind of that little piece of B, the passing chord there on the 9th fret, and then he's grabbing the 3rd and the flat 7, you know, basically that D sharp and that A note right there, like that. And then right there he stays on that D sharp, and kind of moves down on the B string right there, and then go back to A and do it the exact same way, and then back to E. Okay, here's an obscure one. This is Storm the Embassy, which is from the first Stray Cats album, and it's really different, something like this. So it starts once again with this E minor, and you're just almost like a flamenco guitarist, just kind of strumming into it. And then C major. And then this is going to be a D major 9 at 11. And he's basically just taking C major and moving it up 2 frets. That's one of my favorite chords right there. Like that. And then you also hear the open A right there. And then back to that E minor again, like this. And you hear him just slowly dive, you know, that E minor with the bar. Keep in mind you want to go really slow because he's using a Bigsby, not a Floyd Rose. So you're going really slow. Like that. And you hear him start to strum that E, like the bottom part of that E minor chord. This. So it's a really high E minor right there. And you're literally just playing the root note, the octave of the root, and the minor third, you know, E, E, and that G. Almost the same thing, but now in C major, and then D major. Really cool guitar part. All right, the last example is from She's Sexy in 17 from the Rant and Rave album, another, you know, radio hit for Stray Cats. And there's something really interesting happening like in the beginning, and you hear this, you know, kind of boogie woogie single note riff like this. But then you also hear him basically just bash this E7 and slide it and goes right back into that riff. And of course the upright bass is kind of playing with this too. But I've definitely worked on just like a one guitar version of this to try to capture as much of that, you know, at the same time, like this. And that's challenging. It's a good warm-up or just a good, you know, picking and kind of chord-based idea with those single notes mixed in. So really slowly, we're doing, and then an E7 and slide it off, and go right back into that single note riff. Like that. And then do it again. Basically the same thing in A, and then your A7's right there, and go right back to E, and then B7, and you're going to basically do the same thing we did for A, but up 2 frets, and there's your B7, and then mimic that little lick, and then back to the E. So all together one more time. Gonna wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Stray Cats, and I've been a Stray Cats fan since I was a child, you know, and I heard their music on the radio and I thought it was interesting. Of course, you know, Stray Cat Strut, and there's meowing noises and stuff in the background, so it just caught my attention and I thought, what is this? So definitely, I've been, you know, following Brian Setzer and Stray Cats for a long time. And of course, Setzer just erupted on its own, like the jump, jive, and wail, you know, era. But yeah, there's just something really, you know, dynamic and interesting about Brian Setzer. And I'm going to follow this with a 3-for-all episode. So we're going to look at some Brian Setzer licks. So if you like Brian Setzer and like the Stray Cats, if you like Stray Cat Strut, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that song and actually look at some of the licks and some other licks from Brian Setzer. But stay tuned. You know, if you like Brian Setzer or the Stray Cats or Rockabilly, or this kind of classic guitar style, you know, hang around, because I'm going to follow this with more, you know, with Brian Setzer's, you know, 3-for-all episode. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content material. Thank you.